Hello, this is Calvin and my World of Jessica YouTube channel, and today we're going to take a look at another vintage Apple laptop from the collection. In the last video I looked at the PowerBook 145B. There will be a link to that video in the description. Today's laptop, the laptop that I'm going to show you in this video, is considerably more modern. The next one off the tip of the stack is a great little machine, and I think a super underrated one, which is the 12-inch aluminum PowerBook G4. The PowerBook lineup, you had your titanium models and then you had your aluminum models. And this was one of the aluminum models, and one of the things I find most interesting about this is that I'll go over this model, this other laptop, in more depth in the next video. But this one here, this is a Wall Street PowerBook, and this thing is enormous. It's a hunk of junk, frankly. And in just maybe 5 years, I believe it was, maybe slightly more than 5 years, they went from that to this. It's very slim. It's very portable, and I don't think this would look out of place in an Apple store today. It really is a gorgeous, gorgeous design. So, the 12-inch PowerBook G4. This was released, I believe, also alongside a 17-inch model and a traditional 15-inch model. And 17 inches is an enormous size for a computer, and in my book, this is the sweet spot, and I think, in my opinion, this 12-inch PowerBook form factor was Apple's first truly portable desktop computer. It was the first computer they offered that really offered desktop class performance in a size that was not cumbersome to take with you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this particular machine, and if it's hard to see, this is aluminum, and it is not in great cosmetic shape. I bought this machine on eBay, I believe, for like $20. That's how inexpensive it was. Untested, sight unseen. And as can sometimes happen when you do something like that, the machine sort of became a little bit of a money pit. It needed a new hard drive. Got that. Probably another $20. It needed a new keyboard. Got a new old stock keyboard part on eBay. That was probably another $20, $25. But all told, I've still spent less than $100 on this machine. Cosmetically, it is in okay condition. There's some fairly major scratching on the front, and there's a little bit of wibbly-wobbliness of certain parts. For example, there surely shouldn't be that much of a gap there. If we kind of come around the other side, you can kind of see that it bends outward slightly. This is something I'd like to try to correct in the future. But for right now, it is what it is. It also has the same problem that almost every one of these things has, which is that strip of metal that bows outward. That is fixable, but I haven't done it yet. On the side, we've got some I/O. Now, obviously, this is a considerably more modern machine to this one that we talked about last time. We've got modern I/O. We've got a modem. We've got Ethernet. We've got FireWire 400. I believe these are USB 2.0. We'll see because it's all in a document on the computer. This is a mini VGA, something display, again, in a document on here. Sound in, sound out. Kensington lock. The other major cosmetic issue is that the back, it's kind of hard to see, but the hinge is like bowed in one direction, kind of like, see that right there? There's like a big dent right there. And it shows signs of having been impacted around this area. But trying to collect vintage computers in pristine condition in my opinion, is sometimes more trouble than it's worth. Sometimes it'll make them dramatically more expensive, and I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, that it reflects always the actual state that the computer is likely to be in at the time. Like, if you're really looking for the authentic experience with one of the titanium PowerBooks, for instance, it's gonna look beat to heck, because they all looked like that. Even after people just owned them for a month or two, they started to look terrible. So, while having a pristine one, I mean, obviously you'd prefer a pristine one if you could get it, right? But there's not a huge authenticity benefit there, because if it's that hard to find one in pristine condition, then that probably was not the authentic experience for most people. Now, this is in medium condition. This is not close to being in pristine condition, but neither is it in that poor of condition. If we look on the bottom, got a little bit of denting here, a few scratches. Here's another place where my problems began, disassembling and repairing this machine. Two of the screws here, you can see two are gone right now. I haven't gotten replacements yet. And two of the screws were screwed in so tightly that I had to, and stripped so much, the heads were stripped, that I basically had to take a screwdriver and hammer it while slowly turning the screws, and it took me probably an hour or two to just get those two screws out. And that happened to me throughout the disassembly process. There were very frequently screws that were screwed in far too tight. All of which leads me to my main hypothesis, which was that somebody somewhere along the line disassembled and reassembled it for one reason or another and did a very poor job. And over-tightened every single screw and screwed things up, no pun intended, inside, and perhaps even caused the keyboard to break in the way that it did, where only about 10 keys on the keyboard were actually working. And I'm not sure that's a super common problem with these, so I suspect that whoever poked around inside it might have damaged that. I had to put these four puffball things on here because things protrude off the bottom of this, like the battery, and if you set it flat on a wood surface, it will absolutely wreck the wood surface that it's sitting on. Now, let's open it up first of all. Press the latch and the thing bounces open and pulls right open. Oops. Yeah, see, we've got some issues here. Clicking. You can kind of hear that. So it's not in pristine physical condition, but it looks pretty decent. On the inside, it's pretty much flawless. This is all nice. This is a brand new keyboard, new old stock, swapped into this machine. The only problems are these, whatever pads were here and here have really decayed and left a little bit of residue here. But I think this is really an adorable form factor. Here's my hand for reference, and I have large hands. The screen aspect ratio is kind of different from what you're used to seeing nowadays. It's much more narrow. And here's the only, I reiterate my belief that this would not be out of place in an Apple store today. It's a little thick, but it's really, really beautiful. Hex screws that are basically stripped. Again, somebody over-tightened these a lot. Way over-tightened them. So the first thing that I had to do is replace the hard drive, and if you've ever taken one of these apart, it's like you basically have to disassemble the whole thing to get to the hard drive. And before I ordered the new hard drive, I wanted to make sure that it was in fact the hard drive that was, because when I put the system install disk in, the hard drive, it would not even recognize that there was a hard drive in the computer. So step one was finding out whether there was a hard drive in the computer. Step one was finding out whether the problem was actually the hard drive or whether it was something else. So I swapped in the hard drive from my Wall Street machine, which is way easier to access. Swap that in there, it found it no problem. So that, yep, it's the hard drive. Do I still have the old one? No, I'm pretty sure I tossed the old one because it was just broken. And I put in the new one. From there, it was a simple matter of installing the operating system onto the new hard drive. And once I did so, and I started to enter information in the dialog boxes, I realized that only keys in this cluster worked and everything else didn't. So that was what led to me having to replace the keyboard. So a little bit of a money pit, but here it is and it's working. We're going to boot it up. Alright, I found a decent placement of the camera. And I think that improves things slightly if I turn off my lights. Haven't done much with this machine, and I'd like to do more with it. It actually does have pretty decent battery life. I haven't done an extensive test, but I'm guessing it's getting around 2 hours of battery life, which is fairly impressive. We're running macOS 10.4 Tiger. It's got a 1 gigahertz processor. There were 4 processor options available in this form factor, and that is the second of the 4. So it's probably, towards the lower end, but not the low end of the processor spectrum. It's got 256 megabytes of memory, which, if I remember correctly, is the maximum that can be installed. This should all be in this document that we can look at in a second. And actually, I'm kind of curious. Can we see... yeah, here we go. I would like to see the cycles of the battery. 200 cycles. Not bad. Not bad at all. Doing pretty well. Alright, there you go. So, a couple things. Well, let's take a look at the document. This is using Microsoft Office 2004. This is interesting because all the computers at my elementary school when I was younger, they were all eMacs or G4 Mac Minis or something like that. And they all ran software just like this, Tiger and Leopard, and they all had these exact same versions of Office on them, and I don't like these versions of Office. And I never have really liked Microsoft Office at all, ever. I've always preferred either Claris/Pages or Google Docs now. So you will never catch me using a modern version of Microsoft Office except Excel. Microsoft Excel is the only worthwhile product, and in fact I don't find that modern versions of Excel are necessary. I have a Windows 2000 virtual machine on my MacBook Pro, 2017 MacBook Pro, just so that I can run Microsoft Excel 1997, which in my opinion is the best spreadsheet software ever made. So anyways, there's that little tangent. Low end of the mid-range processor options, yeah. As a max, oh no, it's not even close to the maximum memory. It has a maximum of 1.25 gigs. Okay, good to know. 1024 by 768 display, getting into that modern sort of era. It's currently equipped with a 60 gigabyte hard drive. I talked about these. Mini DVI is what that port is called. Here's the finance part, which I think is pretty fun. $2140 in January 2018 dollars. Yeah, I purchased it on eBay for less than 30 bucks. Adding in keyboard and hard drive replacement, probably spent around 75 bucks total. Now, 60 gigabytes is a lot of gigabytes, and I thought there would be a number of ways that I might actually get some use out of this machine. And there still are, but I was a little bit discouraged. For one thing, I thought, well, this iTunes is way better than any of the crappy modern versions of iTunes. Why don't we go ahead and use it as sort of a media machine? Well, turns out that either A, it's shipped with extraordinarily poor speakers, or B, the speakers are screwed up. Let's listen. The speakers are super tinny, and if you compare that they compare extremely unfavorably with the speakers on the Wall Street G4 or on the Wall Street G3, which either means that A, they're broken, or B, Apple took a huge step down in speaker quality coming to this machine. Thought, no problem, I'll just plug in an external speaker. Well, the headphone jack, if I recall correctly, only outputs in mono. That's also a problem. So, okay, hopes somewhat dashed to use as a media center machine. One thing by which I was really impressed, however, is that it was telling me I should do some software updates and that there were software updates available. So I thought, okay, here we are. Thank you. Thank you. No, I don't need to. Okay, all right. No. I said to myself, there is no way this is going to work. Took it down to the basement where I have an Ethernet cable, plugged it into the Ethernet cable, and lo and behold, it found the updates on the server from Apple, downloaded them, installed them, no problem. We're on the latest software. I was really impressed by that. Looks like we're on the switched on mode again. But as you can see, battery life is pretty decent with this machine. Or not. Yeah, there we are. All right. The other thing that's occurred to me, I write a few things, and I'm just almost done with a epic fantasy novel that I've been working on for several years. Almost done with the first draft, which is ridiculous. It's taken me so long, but I mostly write in my spare time at school and etc. And I thought this would be a great computer for a writer. It's a great distraction-free writing environment. It's got good battery life. It's got one of the most beautiful keyboards I've ever used in my entire life. This keyboard is a total dream to type on. It is possibly the best keyboard Apple has ever shipped on any laptop. So, but I couldn't bring myself to give up the modern writing environment that I have on my MacBook with Apple Pages, and I couldn't convince myself that it was worth the effort to migrate everything over to here. And I have that laptop with me at school all day, so it would have made it more difficult to work on. But I have not given up on trying to use this machine to do some writing in the future. If you're wondering what this is called 10.4 Fox. This is a browser that is supposed to bring more modern web browsing to the G4 computers. Browsing the web on one of these is an exercise in futility. Not a lot is going to work. Maybe very, very basic web browsing, downloading things from the Macintosh Garden. That's about all I do with it on the internet. So let me know if you have any suggestions for other things to do with this machine, but this is one of my favorite computers. I really think the design is super gorgeous, and it's recent enough that it's not incredibly difficult to get software for, and yet vintage enough to feel vintage and to feel nostalgic, so or at least that's how I feel about it. So I think that's it for this video. I will probably make my next video on the Wall Street PowerBook G3, one of my favorite computers of all time. But until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.